I think most of us expected not to be surprised by anything that could possibly happen in the Big 12 this season, and we still are surprised. That's how crazy it's been in the Big 12. We appreciate you all being here at the Voice of College Football. This is our Big 12 live show, and we are excited to be joined each and every week by Nathan Brown, Big 12 Mafia. That is a destination that you got to get used to right here on YouTube, Big 12 Mafia, and we're going to slice up the Big 12 with Nathan and guests each and every week. Nathan, how you doing today?
Well, I could have had a better weekend with BYU, but it comes and goes, I guess.
Yeah, you would have definitely taken 9-1 at the beginning of the season, but when it kind of comes down to this and they miss so many opportunities, I reviewed that game and went through the recap and the box score and the highlights and so forth. And yeah, it was right there for the taking, certainly in a number of ways. So before we move on with the rest of the show and look forward to week 13,
sure.
What was your general takeaway from this one?
The same problem that I've been talking about since I got into social media 2.5 years ago, and that is offensive coordinator at BYU is a position that we are way underperforming. Look, Jake Retzlaff, he's a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. He's a system quarterback, and if the system's not working and he tries to ad lib, it doesn't turn out so well. We saw a ton of that last year. The interception that happened on Saturday night was reminiscent of the Oklahoma interception on the 2-yard line. They gave away the game. So, in my opinion, that's coaching, though. I mean, yeah, the quarterback has to make the decision, but the coach is the one who puts him in the position to be successful and to make the best decision. And it was not best decisions on Saturday night. So 9-1, and we look forward to Arizona State.
Quite the showdown coming up unexpectedly. BYU and Arizona State. We're going to dice that one up here. Just want to review, of course, that Colorado had the other big win on the weekend with a 4-touchdown, 49-24 win over Utah. And again, things change so quickly. Utah entered the Big 12 from the Pac-12 along with Colorado and the Four Corner Schools as the overwhelming favorite to be the best program, the best team. And Colorado's obviously flipped the script, and BYU or Utah and also ran here in the Big 12 with only one win. And Shedeur Sanders lightened things up. Travis Hunter making his Heisman push, and Colorado has all the nation's attention legitimately this year. And then we, of course, had the Arizona State win against Kansas State as they go to Manhattan, which is a difficult place to play. Of course, they get it done. Iowa State hanging on by a thread. They beat Cincinnati. So before we go to our guest, Nathan, anything else that stood out to you this past weekend?
I think what we're seeing is the 12 games is a long season, and these teams go through ups and downs throughout the season, and Big 12 is no different than anybody else. At the end of the day, you got to win. BYU, if they win out, they're in the college football playoff. They control their own destiny. If they lose even one more game, I think they start losing tiebreakers and they won't get in. So got to beat Houston, got to beat Arizona State. On the flip side, Arizona State and Colorado, man, just keep winning games. They've looked really good recently, and boy, oh boy, they're a lot of fun. And I think that's what people should take away from the Big 12. If there's anything claim to fame, is that this league has a lot of fun on the football field.
Well, we're going to have fun on the show, folks. We come your way each and every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern time with Nathan Brown, and we're going to line up some great guests, and we're going to get things kicked off on this initial first edition with Michelle Gardner from Arizona Republic, who let us know before we started to record here just a few minutes ago. As you said, Michelle, you didn't expect to be talking about meaningful football at this point in the season.
No, not after 3-9 last year and 3-9 the year before. I think at the start of the season, if you'd have said 6-6 and you get to a lower level bowl game, everybody would have been thrilled. I think enthusiasts, supporters here, they would have taken 6-6 in a heartbeat, given where the program was. And we're going back to the previous coaching regime that left us a train wreck, basically, with sanctions and scholarship reductions and recruiting limitations. And for Kenny Dillingham to turn this thing around in a year is phenomenal. I don't know of a coach that stepped into a harder situation 2 years ago and has done this phenomenal of a job.
Well, he's a young guy too.
Yeah.
And I know that he was 32, I think, when he took
Right.
the job.
34
And,
now.
So, yeah, he's the ripe age of 34 at this point. So,
Ripe is right.
you know, what is it about him? What has he been able to do with this program that has ignited things so quickly?
Well, first of all, he's got an infectious energy. And anybody that saw the post-game interview against Utah that went viral, like, how do you not want to play for that guy?
Right.
He can relate to the players because he's not that far from their age, really. He said he's always been truthful with them about things. He's flat out up front about things. He's never lied to them. And there's a buy-in that, everybody says buy-in, culture. And, I kind of get sick of those words because everybody says they have it, even if they don't. And I guess I'm going to go back to the Cincinnati game and as an example where it told me a lot. So after the game, they lost that game. Jeff Sims quarterback because Sam Levitt was hurt. And as we're waiting to go into the locker room to do our interviews, the interview area, I'm standing off to the side. And Xavier Alford, one of their safeties, is standing at the end of the field. And after every single teammate walked off the field, he was slapping him on the back, giving him a hug, whatever. And he didn't leave the field until he had personally consoled, touched base with every single player that left the field.
Wow.
And that's not something that the coaching staff told him to do. That's one of the team leaders taking accountability and setting himself out there as a leader and just kind of wanting to set the tone. But he literally stood out there for about 15 minutes and waited for every last person to leave the field.
And I would just follow that up by saying Kenny's got all the energy of the Energizer Bunny, and everything you said is exactly right. The kids relate to him. There's no doubt about it. My question is this team more than just Scattaboo? If BYU loads the box and they can bring the heat on run defense, what does the offense look like coming out of Arizona State?
Well, they did. They beat Central Florida without Scattaboo, and I think
Excellent.
that was good for their confidence. I think because they showed they can win without Scat. And I mean, I don't know if you saw the video, but Scat was begging the coach to put him in the third quarter.
I did see that. Yeah, I did see that.
None of us are surprised. Okay,
Yeah.
He was texting Kenny a week, an hour before the game, saying, "Can I play? Can I? Can I? Can I?" And
Nice.
coach is like, "No, you can't."
Okay.
So I think that kind of sent a message. Number one, that you got a guy like Scattaboo that wants to play, like he's all in. He wanted to play that badly. Okay. And then you've got a coach that is sticking to his guns and saying, no, we need you later on. I'm not going to put my player's safety at risk. And I think
which is opposite of what they did up on the hill in Utah.
Exactly.
In Salt Lake City, they kept playing people left and right.
And you're giving the message to the rest of the team, like, we trust you guys, the other running backs. So I think if, like, let's say, he decides to use them, now you're sending a message to your team, like, we don't trust the rest of you.
Right.
So I think that they can. And, they're also missing Raleek Brown, who was basically going to be a 1-2 punch with Scattaboo to a hamstring injury. He came over from USC. So in that game, they were basically without their one and their two running backs. Okay. So yes, I think they can. And I think Levitt is getting better every week. And he's got a connection with Jordan Tyson that's phenomenal. Those two are so in sync. So yes, I think they are more than Cam Scattaboo. I think what Scattaboo is the Energizer Bunny that just is his energy is infectious too. Right. And I think the team feeds off of him. So I think that when he's not in the game, that's kind of what you miss. But he's also there giving the juice on the sidelines too. So the answer to your question is yes. I think the fact that they did win without him proved a point and was probably a good confidence builder for the guys.
Jordan Tyson had a monster night against Kansas State. And Obviously, Michelle, a lot of people are just, even the most ardent college football fans nationally are just starting to catch up on this. When the record looked like, 3-2, 4-2 in that range, okay, well, it's a weak schedule, and
Right.
that's nice that they're a little bit better this year, but then they just kept winning and winning and winning. Now going to Manhattan, Kansas as like an 8-point underdog and pulling off that game and having the lineup against BYU this week, I think is gaining some attention. They've got a pretty prime position at 3:30 Eastern on ESPN. A lot of people are going to watch this team for the first time this Saturday. So, what do you have to tell everybody about this Arizona State football team?
Well, I think when you go back to the Kansas State game, that was not as close as the score indicates. It was 24-0. So I know that when we're in the stadium and when ASU got the second touchdown and it was 14-0, that stadium, which was a sellout, went absolutely dead silent. Like you could have heard a pin drop silent. Like it was unbelievable. And I just think that it's a team that, first of all, they can play loose. They're playing with house money right now. They weren't expected to be in this position. There's no pressure on them.
Yeah.
BYU is the team that's kind of been at the top. And yes, maybe their rise to the top was a little bit unexpected given where they were predicted. But more the pressure was on BYU, especially after now BYU losing last week. The pressure is really all on BYU. So I think that the Sun Devils can play loose, play free. And right now they I don't want to say they think they're unbeatable, but there's just this aura of like looseness about them where they think anything is possible right now. And the one thing Kenny talked about too, he said the one thing they didn't do well last year was overcome adversity, whether it was a penalty or a bad call or an injury. He said they didn't bounce back from adversity. And this year they've been able to do that. And he chalks that up to, again, the culture that's been built, the leadership with the upperclassmen on this team, changing the culture and changing the mindset. So I think it'll be a fun game.
It's a quick rebuild, right, for BYU and for Arizona State and Colorado. I think you're seeing three coaches that are really flexible and know how to use the portal, know how to use every NIL dollar they can get. And at the end of the day, next year is going to really tell which strategy is going to win out. Was this year the aberration with Colorado, Arizona State, and BYU, or was that now the rule? And you have schools like Kansas State and Iowa State that got to play catch up, along with Oklahoma State. I mean, it's fascinating how the season's gone over.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I'm seeing with ASU, it's kind of been a steady build. You look at the attendance early in the season, it was okay. It wasn't great. It's gotten a little bit better with every game. The NIL's gotten gradually better. I think now people are just over the moon with what Dillingham has done. And I think that they're just picking up steam at the right time. I think maybe the donors, boosters, businesses, whatever, that maybe were hesitant at the start because they didn't know who Kenny Dillingham was. Now they're all on board. And I think that there's really the hard work is behind them. I think the hard work was building a trust, gaining, getting some respectability. I think the hardest work's behind them. Because like I said, I think from here on out, anything that they do is a bonus. So I kind of see it from a standpoint of fan interest. NIL is going to get better. And that's what was lagging. And that's one reason that ASU was in the position it was in at the end of the Ray Anderson, Herm Edwards era,
right.
Complicated by the NCAA situation. So I think everybody is so elated with how things are going now that I think this thing is only going to keep picking up speed.
I have spent my Sundays and Mondays about the last 3 weekends trying to carve through tie-breaking scenarios in all these conferences.
Haven't we all?
And so I try to tackle all of them. I was just starting to get to the Big 12, and my thought was, okay, I see Iowa State down there with 3 losses, and I see Baylor down there with 3 losses, and obviously you do the quick math, and they can catch them, meaning BYU and Colorado in the loss column. So I started to work through some of these tiebreakers, but I didn't get fully through it. So does somebody have a handle on this, and who can possibly win the Big 12 or get to the Big 12 championship game?
Go ahead. I'm just trying to get into it. Like my boss just asked me about it this morning. I thought that if ASU won these 2 games they were in, but maybe not necessarily. So I'm not exactly sure. I actually have a message out to the powers that be about that right now.
So if BYU wins out, they're in. If Colorado wins out, they're in. I think Arizona State has the tiebreaker. Well, if they beat BYU, they'd have the tiebreaker against BYU. Now BYU's out and Arizona State's in, playing against Colorado. The fall off and where you have these tiebreakers really kind of dig in is when you talk about Iowa State and you talk about Kansas State. Both these schools were way up and now they've come back to the pack a bit. And I think Iowa State has lost every tiebreaker going into the last 2 weeks of the season. So BYU wins out, they're in. If it gets dicey if they lose another game. Certainly if they lose to Arizona State, then Colorado and Arizona State play for the conference championship game.
So the top 3 teams control their own destiny is basically what you're saying.
Yes, that's right.
And then, so even if Iowa State ties one of them as a 2-loss team right now, they don't play Arizona State, so we don't have a head-to-head to go to there.
Right. I think what the multitude of tiebreaker scenarios, the points scored versus points given up, total points played in a season. As far as I'm concerned, Mark, I wouldn't waste a bunch of time on it because next week it'll be something completely different and teams will be in there that maybe we didn't even think about this week. So it's a mess. They need to get can we please in the off season start a charter that says we want every conference to go to divisions. You go to divisions and you get rid of tiebreakers. Right. That's what we
agree.
Yeah.
I agree. It might be geographically tough the way this conference is, but yeah, it is a mess. And especially when you look at who's played who. Like Colorado, had a cakewalk schedule compared to everybody else. And again, you never know, how it's going to pan out. At the start of the year, it looked like ASU had a really tough schedule, but nobody expected Oklahoma State to be as bad as they are or Utah to be as bad as they are. But like if, when you look at who's kind of playing who, Colorado's kind of lucked out here in the fact that they haven't played a couple of the other top teams, including Arizona State.
Right.
And I don't think they played BYU either.
No, they don't.
So I think Colorado really lucked into a pretty good situation.
So it's
not that they're not good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not dissing them for that, but I'm just saying, and again, you never know how the schedule's going to break. But Colorado, as it turned out, kind of had the easier path here.
Well, that was supposed to be the case for Utah as well, but obviously it's not quite worked out for them. So we get into all this common opponent business. So it would depend on who the teams are that obviously tie to figure out their common opponents. And then when you're looking at, again, I don't even want to start in on it because there's too many teams to configure a bunch of various situations. So bottom line, everybody, BYU and Arizona State play this weekend. The winner of that game will control their own destiny. And of course, the other team, Colorado, controls its own destiny. And they've got Oklahoma State coming up, I know, and Kansas coming up first for Colorado. And then they've got to face that vaunted 0-7 Oklahoma State team. But hey, with a veteran quarterback and with all those guys that played 21 or 20 starters coming back from that team that was supposed to go to the Big 12 championship game, wouldn't it be crazy if they were the ones that threw this all out of whack and brought in some kind of tiebreaker because they pulled off an upset the final Saturday?
Let's not throw Kansas out with the dishwater. This is a what if, but if they'd gotten off to a faster start, Kansas, they'd be much farther along. They'd be tough to beat in a playoff format. They're not going to get there, but they're much better than anybody's giving them credit for as well.
I agree. And you look at they just lost a lot of close games.
Yeah,
they're like 0-5 or 1-5 in games decided by a few points or less. And we were talking about that when they came in to play ASU, seemingly a lifetime ago. That they had a tendency of giving up scores late in the half and late in the last minute of the game. But yeah, they're not a bad team. They just came up short in a lot of close games.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, just to get back to your earlier point, and I think we're all three in agreement that while the divisions would cause these situations where fans would get disgruntled because, okay, the best team in the conference is playing the fourth best team in the conference because
Right.
the three best teams in the conference are on one side, at least basically you just said, okay, who's the best team in that division? Oh, it's that team? Oh, maybe it's those two teams. Oh, they played. There was a tiebreaker. Done. That's it.
Right.
And I could only find 3 occasions since conference championship play started where there were 3 teams tied for a division championship, and you had to go to then common opponents and all of that. But basically, it was almost always settled by the head-to-head matchup. Now we got this situation where hardly any of these teams play each other. So you're coming up with a tiebreaker that doesn't even really isn't that relevant, isn't that valid, I should say.
No, and I agree. And the other thing you got to look at too is who knows who's going to be a good team and a bad team one year to the next. And we've seen how Arizona flipped the script in 1 year. Arizona State flipped the script in a year.
Well, Arizona
with
did
too. The transfer portal makes it much easier to flip the script.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so if you try to balance the schedules, to your point, if you try to balance the schedules, which I am all for, but it was more, again, a more valid approach a few years ago to say, okay, well, we're going to try to make these very balanced, fair schedules based on last year's standings.
Right.
But that doesn't always work out. And it's working out less and less as we go forward.
The only thing anybody wants is good football. That's what people want to watch. Usually conference championship mini tournament would bring those 4 teams together to get a true champion, to get the seeds, if you get any, in the college football playoff. The Big 12 and the ACC are in the same boat. They're both swimming in the same direction, towing that boat. And at the end of the day, they need help from these other conferences to get more than one team in. If BYU loses, well, I don't see a pattern where BYU wins out, loses in the championship game, and gets an at-large. I don't see anybody getting one. It's win and you're in, and maybe you get help, but it'll be tough.
Yeah, I don't think the Big 12 is going to get more than one team, and the ACC either. I mean, we all know that there's SEC bias, and they do play a rigorous schedule. But we know that bias is there. So I think both of those conferences, it's one bid, and it's get in the conference championship game and when you're in. And, I think that's it.
No.
I would generally agree. And we've got a rhetorical question coming in from our buddy Mike 3883. Basically, how many years have the top 3 teams in the Big 12 been in the Big 12 combined? I think he knows the answer to that question.
Yeah,
to make a point there.
I think 1 1 year.
1 times 3. Which is amazing. I don't know how to interpret that. I don't know if the old guard of the Big 12 is kind of grumbling, thinking, it makes our conference look bad when 3 new teams come in and they dominate the conference and they're at the top of the conference, or you just figure, hey, we're a stronger conference now.
In my opinion, bringing in the four corners schools made the conference stronger. And what's happened at Arizona and what's happened at Utah is going to become more frequent. The chances that we just have a perennial power step up and dominate this conference in 5 years is very remote, in my opinion. And we could have a series of champions year in, year out that never are replicated and go from season to season. Arizona State could win it this year. Utah could win it the next. I think the only teams that really may struggle in this format we currently have are Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati they have a long way to travel, and they don't have everything built up like West Virginia does. And at UCF, they've got some institutional things that they're challenged with. So at the end of the day, the conference is a mess, and it's a lot of fun to watch. But I wanted BYU to get to the championship game and lose a close one to Colorado, so they got 2 teams in. That's what I was shooting for.
I'll tell you one thing. One thing I've learned is we got spoiled in the Pac-12. My travel this year, it's been really
Yes.
difficult.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, down to the Oklahoma State game where we got rain delayed by 3 hours at the half. And then I drove back from Stillwater to Oklahoma City in a monsoon. And then my hotel got evacuated with a tornado warning at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh no.
Yeah, so that was not a lot of fun. And even, Manhattan's a 2 hour drive from Kansas City. So you're
Yeah.
driving in. I got back to my hotel about 3:30 in the morning, got up at 5, got on a plane, flew back to
Wow.
Phoenix, and then covered a basketball game. So,
Wow,
so
that's crazy.
I got really spoiled being able to get on a plane and basically go anywhere in the Pac-12 nonstop. And most of them you could get there in an hour and a
Yeah.
half. So I was warned of this. I knew it was going to be an issue. So rest in peace, Pac-12 as we knew it. I miss that.
Well, yeah, we've got the Pac-2 going, of course, and they're
Yep.
trying to salvage things by bringing in the Mountain West, but it's never going to be the same. It's never going to be the quality that it
Right.
was. And we saw a somewhat college football playoff fraud of Washington State at 8-1 get exposed by all teams. New Mexico this past
Yeah, that
weekend,
was
so that
not
showed
good.
you what's going on there. Michelle, we know you got a lot going on and need to move on, but before you take off, we'd love to get your take on this, because as the records obviously mount the losses by the top teams, with BYU getting knocked off, and who knows how many more losses there could be. We could have maybe a couple 7-2 teams in the conference play in the conference championship game. Mike is asking here, with Boise State red hot, and of course Army's looming out there with a date against Notre Dame, is it possible the Big 12 gets the 5th highest conference spot in the playoffs? And just to clarify for everyone, the top 4 conference champions get the byes. And so it's always been assumed those were going to be the 4 power conferences. But we got Boise State looming out there.
Oh, I don't even know what to make of that. I debate this every single week. I'm not all in on Indiana yet. Again, that's a team that hasn't played the best teams in that conference.
Yeah.
The only thing I could say about Boise, they did darn near beat Oregon. Now, granted, that was 100 years ago, like very
Yeah, it
early
was.
in the season, but I just don't see how the strength of schedule for Boise State would lend itself to being ahead of the Big 12. I have a hard time with that. I do. I have a hard
understand. I
time
do
with that.
too. I'm right there with you. I've got a ton of respect for Boise State, but there's a difference between getting psyched up and primed for one game against an Oregon and then going into a Mountain West where you are clearly the best team.
Yes.
And you're routing everyone by 3 or 4 touchdowns versus going through the grind of playing top 25 to 40 teams week after week after week after week.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I agree. And we have the Fiesta Bowl here, and usually the Big 12 champion goes to the Fiesta Bowl. And I'm sure the last thing that the Fiesta Bowl probably wants to see is Boise State here instead of the Big 12 champion. Now, nothing against Boise State,
Right.
but when you look at the fan bases from the Big 12, that's a great trip to Phoenix. And I was at a Fiesta Bowl function several weeks ago, and we were talking about scenarios in which the Big 12 champion would not be in the Fiesta Bowl. And I was basically told it would be, Boise State winning out and then the Big 12 cannibalizing itself, which basically we're kind of starting to see. But I don't think Boise State deserves a spot ahead of an ACC school or a Big 12 school.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree. Boise's coming back to the pack, right? Everybody now sees they're playing the San Jose States and Nevadas of the world, and that's not to knock those schools, but at the end of the day, competition should matter. And 11-2, Colorado is not going to lose a spot to Boise State. They're not going to lose a spot to BYU or ASU. If something crazy happened and Iowa State got in there with 3 losses, that maybe, but any 2-loss team is worth, in my opinion, they're better put together than a 1-loss Boise team that's been beaten on puppies. So,
Absolutely. Well, Michelle, we appreciate you stopping by. Everybody check
Yeah,
out Michelle's work at Arizona Republic. You see her X handle right there. Anything in particular
absolutely.
that you're working on, Michelle, that people need to look out for?
Oh, we're just loading it this week with obviously this is the biggest week ASU has had for football in a very long time. We were actually talking about this at halftime. So ASU was leading Kansas State 21-0 at halftime of that
Wow.
game. And we were talking about the last time that ASU played a game that important. And we went back to the 2021 season when ASU was at Utah. And
Mm,
Utah was nationally ranked and ASU was 5-1. And ASU led that game 21-7 at the half and then gave up 28 straight points in the second half.
mm,
And then everything was downhill after that. It was COVID, it was Herm Edwards, it was the
right.
investigation. So we just kind of thought it was funny that it was 21-0 at half, and we were like thinking eerie, what if they crash and burn in the second half of this game? But they didn't. So anyway.
You could make an argument. You could make an argument. Most important game since 1996. And this is why,
Absolutely.
because it's a college football playoff scenario. It's not, let's just get
Right.
to like, of course, Todd Graham's team went to the Pac 12 championship game against Stanford, but that was a 3-loss team. Sure, it's great
Right.
to go to a conference championship game, but they're not anywhere close to making the Final Four and get to a college football championship game. This is for the real deal.
Right. Right. No. And so like I said, we're gonna have 3-4 reporters out at practice this week, in the days that we're allowed to be out there. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I tell you what, it's just a world of a difference when you're covering a team that's 3-9 and you're covering a team that's playing for something.
Yes, sir.
Oh my God.
Yes.
It's a good problem to have because, last
Yeah.
year by this time we were ready to go on to basketball and let's be done with it.
Yep.
So it's a good problem to be this busy.
That's awesome, Michelle. Well, it was good to see you. Enjoy the game this weekend. You get to stay at home this
Right.
weekend, at least for football.
Right. And actually, here's a funny thing too. I'm actually very good friends with the Retzlaff family. So,
Are you really?
yes, I am. Yes, I know. I know Jake's mom and dad very, very well.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, they might stay at my house this weekend. In fact,
I need somebody to give me a ticket so I can fly in same day. That's what I'm
yeah,
looking for.
his dad coached a small college team in California, and I covered his dad's team. And
Cool.
his mother coached tennis, and I covered her team. And
Wow.
so, yeah, I go back with the Retzlaff family. So this is going to be a little interesting one for me.
Big weekend.
That is awesome. Well, thanks for that tidbit before you walk out the door, Michelle. That was a great one to lay on us.
It's nice to meet you, Michelle.
You too.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, I think the Big 12 is in a position they want people to be talking about them, but not the way they're talking about them now. The way they're talking about them now is this conference is so bad they can't have one good team to win out. Now BYU goes 12-1. I think that gravitas stick around. Colorado gets to the championship game and wins. That gravitas sticks around. If they don't, if you have a really bad 2-loss or heaven forbid a 3-loss conference championship, that would not be good for the Big 12.
It's really not. And I think Colorado's the one team that, because of the head coach, because of the quarterback, because of Travis Hunter vying for a Heisman, even though they're going to be a huge underdog in the playoffs, if they reach that point, they're going to bring a lot of cachet with them.
I agree. Yep. And it'll be exciting. Isn't it cool that we're talking about all these teams still in the hunt, not only for their conferences, but getting these other bids into the CFP? Why don't we have 16? I want 16 teams in the CFP. That would be awesome.
Yeah, well, that opens up the world to all sorts of possibilities and all sorts of further scenarios if we go to 16. But let's stay at 12. Nathan.
Okay.
Let's see this one play out once.
Okay.
But if I were you and I was a Big 12 guy, yeah, there would be some angst there just in regards to seeing all these teams flooding in from the SEC and the Big 10 into a 12-team tournament and not seeing that regard given to some degree. Not saying that there should be 4 or 5 teams, but to some degree for a second team to be placed in from the Big 12. And I'm not advocating on that as some kind of pity motion to lift that. But there have certainly been seasons in the past that the Big 12 would have earned that second or third team in. It's a much different scenario now, and we'll just have to see. This is what I want, Nathan. I just don't want there to be an assumption. Now, there has to be, to a certain extent, this first season, but base it going forward, meaning 2025 and going forward, these at-large positions, number one, look at the season here and now, not what happened last year, the year before, what the reputation is, all that. What happened this season? What were the results outside the conference? And then number two, hey, if the SEC continues to roll, if they continue to post the best postseason results, I don't generally have an issue with that staying with them from season to season. If there's a close call to be made to say, you know what, this conference has proven it over and over and over and over.
Right.
So the Big 12 is going to have to get in there, and they're going to have to show that they belong.
Yeah,
unfortunately, they're only going to have one team to be able to
Yeah.
show it. They're not going to be able to like flood the market with 5 teams from the SEC and say, oh yeah, well, 2 of them got blown out, but forget those 2. These other
Right.
3 advanced. So it's kind of like the NCAA tournament bracket. If you got a
Mhm.
league that it gets 7 or 8 bids, then you can suffer some losses and just focus on the teams
That's
that
right.
made it through, versus you get 3 bids and they're gone the first weekend. And then everybody's looking around like, what's wrong with you? You guys suck. Well, we only got 3 teams in.
Right. Yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, it is a tournament. It's an invitational tournament, and the best teams, hopefully we get the best teams in at the end of the day. The Big 12 has to have a lot of chips fall in the right direction to get a second team in. That second team could only be BYU because everybody else has 2 losses and can't get back. So if BYU goes 11-2, do they get an invite? I mean, there would have to be some chaos still to happen in the SEC and the Big Ten, I think, before that could even come up. So for me, it's cheering for BYU. For the Big 12, it's cheering for as much high-profile games and final turnout that we can get.
The issue right now with the Big 12 in comparison to the Big 10 is that those Big 10 teams have such sterling records
Right.
that to get those knocked off is going to take the
difficult.
Purdue's of the world to win games and so
Yeah.
forth. And then the SEC, there's just such a stack of teams involved.
Yeah.
You know, we're looking at going into the weekend, this past weekend, there was a possibility, though remote, for an 8-team tie for first place in the SEC. I think that's been dropped to like 5.
Wow.
But now it's a fairly legitimate possibility that there could be a 5-way tie for first place in the SEC, and it wouldn't have to be a crazy set of circumstances at all.
I don't know what they're going to do to fix this. You know, in my opinion, going to 3 conferences, 20 teams in a conference, 60 teams. You can streamline the conference championships. You have maybe 1 or 2 rounds, maybe lower a season to 11, and play these conference championship games to get in. I don't know. There's lots of thousands of ideas out there. What they're going to make work eventually, I don't know what it is.
Nathan, the travesty that was fairly close to happening that I would have loved to have seen, not for this team to get screwed, but for it to magnify the issues with this format, is when SMU was undefeated in conference, as they still are, but Miami and Clemson were both undefeated.
That's right.
But they all 3 would win out.
Yeah.
SMU would get screwed out of the conference championship game, having lost, as you will know, to only 1 team in the country by a field goal, BYU, and have BYU be as high and as untouched as possible.
Right.
Hopefully 13-0 at that point, and have SMU going like, it's one thing to get left out of a conference championship game when you're 6-2, 7-2 in the conference and you're tied 3 ways. Now that's one thing, but it's another thing when you do everything you can.
Yeah,
say,
sure.
We're undefeated. What did you want us to do?
Yeah, you can only beat who's in front of you. We know that. History tells us that going back decades. So, I think at the end of the day, we're all learning. There were going to be some mistakes made this year. I think the first CFP and then the second CFP shows they were a correction and then an overcorrection. Somewhere in the middle is where those teams should have been. And all they're doing is setting the stage to keep out SMU, to keep out Boise State. They're just looking for ways to lay the groundwork so when that happens, they can say, see, we told you this could happen because, X, Y, and Z occurred. So Arizona State's got a chance to win out, get to a conference championship game, and frankly, them or BYU or Colorado breaks the bank. People are stunned by that data.
Now, for as much as I'm sticking up for the Big 12 here, now we got a Big 12 guy in Nathan.
Yeah.
And he's the reason we've got this Big 12 show that we're going to be here with you each and every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern time, folks. I cover college football from top to bottom across the landscape, and I'm not a Big 12 guy. So when I see comments like this, so Devil Frog says the new Big 12 still has more schools with BCS and New Year's Six bowl wins, playoff host sites, than any other Power Four conference. The disrespect is rooted in ignorance. Well, that's not inaccurate when he says the new Big 12.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Devil Frog's a longtime viewer of mine and done some stuff with him in the past. I'm not sure what he's getting at here. He is a TCU guy. So you talk to the irate 8 schools, you and I both know who they are. They do believe that it's a long-standing disrespect and this idea that schools came in to rescue the league. The messaging coming out of Utah did not help in this regard because they showed up and said, yeah, we're here. We, do everything for us, has led to some of this bitterness. So I would just tell Devil Frog, and for that matter, any other Big 12 fan, look, we win and we're in, right? We have to keep winning games. When our teams beat each other up, instead of having 1 or 2 a season, step up and actually play superior ball, we're going to get what we get. This middlingness is not great. You could do a comparison with the Big Ten and the SEC all you want, but that's where the money is. So just bang at the moon, being upset because it's their game. They can make the rules. I've just chosen to walk away from that. I don't do that anymore. But there is no such thing as fairness. And the ACC and the Big 12 are both getting screwed.
This is what I think he means. This is what I think Devil Frog means based on the second statement.
Oh, okay.
He means, and because this is factually incorrect, so he can't mean that the entirety of the Big 12, as it currently stands, has more BCS and playoff games, wins, appearances, etc., than the Big Ten and the SEC, because that's factually just untrue. What I think he means is that if you take the entire Big 12, that everyone has made it to one of those games, excluding Texas Tech, where you can't say that about the Big Ten.
Oh,
Rutgers
I see.
has never been to that kind of game.
Okay.
Maryland has, but not in the Big Ten. So I don't know how he's slicing it up, but I think that's what he's getting at, is that everyone in the Big 12 has had, outside of Texas Tech, had a place within the BCS or a playoff game.
At the end of the day, Big 12 needs to show up and show out. Next season, everybody needs to put in the money to become a better team. We can't have like 8 teams at 6-3 at the end of the season. That's not going to help anybody. We need teams, and I don't care who it is. I would love for it to be BYU, but I don't mind trading either. If another team comes along, TCU steps back up, makes it back to the championship, I'm happy, right? I want the Big 12 to be moved forward, not just one team. And that's where the Big 12 needs to stay united.
It is the most unpredictable conference in college football, and I think that speaks to what the sport's all about and has been for generations in regards to the ridiculous finishes and just the drama that captivates us every week.
Right. That's true. Mark, I don't know. I'm depressed. I'm coming out of my depression today a little bit. I've got my show tomorrow night. I'm like, I don't want to do a show tomorrow night. I was so depressed after BYU.
Yeah.
Defense played well. It was the offense that was just, oh, brother, what can you do?
Yeah, I reviewed that game and sifted through it, and yeah, the stats in particular are pretty horrendous on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, it's brutal.
So what would you do with the offense when you talk about the offensive coordinator not coming through for you?
Yeah.
What do you think needs to be addressed?
Well, for one, he needs to be gone, and the reason is his scheme. He can recruit. He's brought in good players, but at the end of the day, he's won when he's had quarterback coaches doing most of the quarterback coaching. Now he's the QB coach, and his schemes are just ridiculous. I know you said you watched the game. If you would go back, and maybe next week you can do this, watch and see how many side-to-side east-west run and pass plays he has. BYU was laying the wood every time they go down the field. They drive right down. They were able to score. They did against Utah the week before. He loves laterals. He loves side-to-side veer type offensive handoffs and option screens for running for wide receivers. He's addicted to them, and the defense just has to scheme up when they see those positions. And I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I would know how to play defense against this BYU offense the way he calls it.
Good stuff. Well, Nathan, unless you've got anything else you'd like to hit
No,
on, we can wrap it up.
This is great, Mark. Thanks. I'm glad we're doing this. And yeah, we'll keep pushing people this direction. You guys, Voice of College Football, I'm going to be here on Mondays. And then, of course, we got all our shows on the College Football Mafia Network. You can find us on YouTube. And just, this is fun. I hope you're having fun.
Absolutely.
All right. Excellent.
It's a good deal right here. And again, it's going to be every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern time, folks. And if you've got any particular Big 12 guests that you would like us to pursue and bring onto the show, just let us know.
I'm with it.
Right,
Let's
sir.
go. Okay. We'll see you later.
All right. Good to see you, Nathan.
You
Appreciate
too, Mark.
you being here.
All right. You too. Bye. Peace.
All right, everyone. We'll set you up for the rest of the day in the Voice of College Football. We've got an Alabama show at 6 p.m. Eastern time. We've got Rutgers at 7 p.m. Eastern time. We've got a new Oklahoma show that we really want you to check out. This is going to be a whole lot of fun with Chad and with Tyranny over on the Oklahoma channel, again, 7 p.m. Eastern time. We've got, did I say Rutgers at 7 p.m. Eastern time? And I'm doing this all without the schedule in front of me, believe it or not. We've got a new Ohio State show at 8 Eastern. So again, Alabama at 6 p.m. Eastern, Oklahoma at 7. No, I think that's 7 Central. Check out the community post that we put on the front page of the channel each and every week. And that'll be it. I know it's Alabama, Rutgers, Oklahoma, Ohio State tonight here on the Voice of College Football. So we do appreciate you being here. And again, be back here next Tuesday or next Monday. We'll get it straight. Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern time right here at the Voice of College Football for the Big 12 live show